your Money Matters show with Ripon Ray, once again, every Tuesday between 5 and 6, dealing primarily about your problems linked with money. Yes, once again, we're talking about money. In the last 3 years, I've covered so many different issues. I covered bailiff, council tax, loans, credit cards, and many more issues that you have recommended that I should cover. So, this week, the show is going to be divided into two segments. First half, we're going to be looking at money and problems related with your fuel supplies. It could be gas or electricity. Now, I've got a guest speaker, Angela Dietrich, who personally has an experience in complaints related with fuel suppliers, and hopefully she'll be able to guide you through the process and also explain her own problems with her landlord as well as fuel companies. And hopefully by listening to her, you'll be able to understand what you can do if you're having problems linked with your fuel supplies, and of course most importantly when it comes to money. And on the second half, I'll be talking about PPI. Those who don't know PPI, it stands for Payment Protection Insurance. And as you know, financial institutions thus far has been compensating consumers. So far, it has been more than, I'm sure, £1.5 billion. Of course, for that, the deadline is looming soon. As I understand it, it's going to be on the 29th of August next month. So obviously, I want to inform you what you can do to recover your money. And yeah, so those are the two things that we're going to be covering. So yes, in the show we have Angela. Angela, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Angela, clearly you kind of bring a wealth of experience and knowledge really around the fuel suppliers. Now, briefly, do let us know, I mean, what actually happened in your situation?
Okay, so there's two parts to my story. Part one is when I was making my own arrangements for gas and electricity, and I was with Npower, a very reputable company, as everybody knows. But they kept putting my rates up. So I was very, stressed out about that, obviously. But luckily, I had Toynbee Hall right in my neighborhood. So I went in there to the advice center that they run, and I spoke to a wonderful person who was there at the time, Paul Morton, who's no
Mm-hmm.
longer with Toynbee Hall, unfortunately. But he was able to hammer out an agreement for me with Npower. And I think what clinched it was the, good reputation of Toynbee Hall, because he wrote actually a letter to Npower, on behalf of Toynbee Hall, you could say, putting my case forward for reducing, the amount of money they were charging me for gas and electricity, commensurate with, the status of a single person, living in a flat. So he was able to ascertain how much I should be paying, and then comparing it with how much I was, and he, found out that I was paying far too much. So then when he interceded on my behalf, on, obviously with the Toynbee Hall logo on the letter, he was able to approach customer service and the complaint, particularly the complaint center, which they do have. And in the course of time, they said, okay, fine. They accepted his terms, they agreed. I had been overcharged, and they reduced my rates. Now, that was the first part of my story. Second part of my story occurred more recently when I moved. Now, you have to know that I live in a housing association, Now, I moved into a block of flats for the over 50s where they were actually making the arrangements for us for our gas and central heating. So it was gas, hot water, and central heating, which was charged on, just a general basis that each flat would, be charged the same amount, irrespective of the number of people living there. So anyway, I what happened is that I was paying the electricity again through with Npower. Again, they charged me, they were overcharging me. But what happened then was that because Paul Morton is no longer with Toynbee Hall, unfortunately, actually it was my housing association who recommended going to a different advice centre called Bromley-By-Bow, because there's a dedicated worker there who deals only with energy companies, so that they will approach the website, they will go into the website, go compare for, the users. So I was very happy to let them do it on my behalf, because they came up with actually what was probably a satisfactory solution for me with another energy company. So as a result of which I actually switched from Npower to a company which is more ecologically sustainable called Bulb, and they are actually based in London, which makes it easier to use them probably, especially when it comes to complaints and things like that. So that I now am on a fixed tariff with Bulb, which seems commensurate with my status as a single person, a single user, and so far so good.
Okay, I mean, clearly, I mean, the outcome in your case has been positive, and no doubt there are many listeners whose outcome may not be as positive. So, kind of to go back to the first scenario, why do you think it took so long for a fuel supplier to provide you the best deal? What do you think were the main reasons for you getting the best deal initially?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think that they will just try it on. I think they will, just be, they're quite ruthless actually in how they deal with even long-standing customers. I mean, I had been with Npower for quite a long time, even when I was still with my ex-partner, and, maybe they were charging us a fair rate. But then when I became single status, maybe they just thought they could just, run roughshod over me and just do whatever they liked. And I was just feeling, quite powerless, in the face of, this, massive company that didn't seem to be responding at all to my, kind of needs when it came to, hammering out a fair price.
I mean, you talked about how, although you are with one company for a very long time, being a long-term customer with a company doesn't mean you're getting a fair deal.
Exactly.
So, do you think there ought to be something done about this? Because it seems to me that we stick with companies, but by sticking around and showing our loyalty, companies themselves are taking a mickey in the end. Really.
Oh, they do. I mean, that's even been my experience with TalkTalk when it comes to, my landline, internet, and I have those arrangements with TalkTalk. It's the same situation. They keep putting up, the price, and you just don't know why. They don't justify themselves. That's another gripe that I have. That even when they keep increasing the price, they don't justify themselves. They don't actually tell you what the reason is, whether you're getting a better, kind of deal. I mean, a better service from them. Nothing like that. I think they're just utterly ruthless.
So, if you had to say something to the suppliers and creditors and your phone company, what would you say?
I would say that they need to improve their customer service, number one. And number two, they need to be able to justify any kind of increase that they seem to arbitrarily do when it comes to how much you're paying.
And how about customer loyalty?
Yeah, they need to reward that somehow. I mean, I just had a 2 hour chat just the other day with TalkTalk because, again, they wanted to increase, because my contract runs for 18 months each time. So it was up. The contract was up. And again, they wanted to increase, the amount I was paying. But I just refused. I just put my foot down and I just told them, look, they need to be able to, kind of reward me to some extent. So as a result, I finally, after 2 hours on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
managed to get somebody who actually agreed that they wouldn't put up the rates.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you feel as though it's the right thing for the regulators to think about, where if you're going to be a loyal customer, by default the loyal customer should be getting a cheaper rate rather than and the new customer getting the cheaper rate?
Of course, of course. So they should reward loyalty. They should. I mean, to be honest with TalkTalk, I had
Mm-hmm.
to threaten them. I had to tell them, okay, the next time the contract, comes up for renewal, I
Mm.
may just change. And I think that clinched it,
Mm-hmm.
that they, reneged and decided they would charge me the same,
I mean,
continue to charge me the
yeah.
same.
I mean, clearly you have the confidence to take on companies, it seems, either on your own or from support from others. Not everyone has the confidence. So, what would you say to those who don't have the confidence and would like to take on companies like Npower and others?
Well, I would definitely recommend going to a reputable advice center. Toynbee Hall is actually one of the best, as far as I can see, in London. It commands a lot of respect on the part of the public, and that includes energy companies, obviously. Because as soon as they got the letter from Paul that had the, logo of Toynbee Hall on it, they responded, whereas they had not responded before.
But did you try contacted them on your own?
Yeah, I did. Of course I did. I tried everything before, and nothing worked until I went to Toynbee Hall, and, Paul was just amazing.
Mm. I mean, looks like clearly Toynbee Hall and Paul have had a positive impact on you, as well as, let's not forget, Bromley-By-Bow Advice Centre.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah, I
definitely.
mean, the thing is, the other thing is, I mean, in terms of kind of looking at a kind of a bigger picture, in terms of getting the best deal, of course, we can work hard to make sure we're getting companies are giving you the service you want in terms of customer service as well as cheaper deal. But from the point of view of us, you and I, being proactive, what sort of things can we do to make sure we actually get the best deal in the market where we don't get ripped off?
Well, that's a good question, to be frank. I think
Hmm.
it's a minefield, as far as
Absolutely,
I
it
can
is.
see. Because I just, had some feedback from a friend who did not approach an advice center,
Mm-hmm.
and she definitely is struggling much more than I had to. I mean, she has tried herself to go on the website Go Compare
Yeah,
to get the best deal. She's tried to get the best deal out of her own company called EDF,
yeah.
another very powerful and reputable company. And even though on their official website she has found, information that there is a better option for her, she hasn't been able to access it.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes to show it's a minefield,
What's
for the
the
individual acting on his or her own to actually access these things.
what was the problem with not being able to access it? What was the cause behind it? Do you
Well, she
remember?
said she kept clicking on the link, it didn't work. She spoke to an advisor there.
Yeah,
They even pointed out a different deal that she could try to have.
yeah.
She couldn't get the other one either. So that's why I say, I mean, rather than,
Doing it
sort
by
of
yourself.
being, sort of frustrating yourself
Mm-hmm.
to no end, is much, much better. I would really strongly advise, if you have the opportunity, to go to an advice center,
Yes.
because you get the people there,
Mm-hmm.
specialists,
Yeah.
hopefully, in that field, who can help you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right that there are those who are struggling, also online, going online. A lot of people in our local community struggling to read and write. So naturally, they by default pay more. I think you've been fortunate enough to have that confidence. And also, if you don't have that confidence, you know where to go and get it, and not many people do. But if you generally can do it yourself, I mean, Angela did mention about compare the market, how friends' experience may not be as positive, but usually when you do nothing, and the default position is if you don't do nothing, once the fixed term contract with your fuel supplier runs out, by default you end up going to a variable rate, and that's usually a standard rate that is more expensive than what you had originally bought on a fixed term basis. So I mean, do you want to tell us briefly, Angela, the difference between fixed and variables?
Well, I mean, supposedly you you sign up to a contract where if you get the fixed rate, it means they will not, increase what you're paying over a certain period of time that lasts throughout that contract. Whereas variable, what they say is the rate could go up and down, depending upon your usage. But I think that's highly questionable, to be frank, because I'm not always sure how reliable it is when even when they send their own operative out to measure, the amount of energy you've been using, whether they genuinely take that into account or not. I would question that. Even if you take a meter reading yourself and you tell them about it,
Yeah.
I have a feeling all of that, is kind of airy-fairy. I'm not sure, they even take account of it.
Well, thank you for sharing this. I mean, you briefly mentioned about meter reading. As a general term, when fuel companies usually find out how much fuel you've used, the only way they can identify it, so doing the meter is that works, is through meter reading. Through meter reading, you will know how much you're using, or your household will know how much you're using, because when we're talking about fuel, it's about volumes really. So you do need to check regularly to identify whether you're paying the exact amount or you're paying more. I mean, Angela mentioned when you were double when you're with your partner, and they had they assumed you were a couple, so they charged you on a couple rate. But obviously once they knew about your individual circumstance and the circumstances changed, naturally they should have charged you accordingly, which they did not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's one of those things that most people take it for granted. Firstly, if there are change of circumstances, please do say. And secondly, I mean, do not be afraid of arguing with the company, because in the end there's always a due process, and believe it or not, if something sounds suspicious, it probably is suspicious. Yeah, especially when it comes to companies anyway. So that's why I would urge you, if you feel something isn't right, it probably isn't, and by all means complain against fuel supplier, and there's always a due process that everyone has to follow. If you feel you are not treated fairly, complain. If not, you can always take your complaint to an external body, depending upon which external body your fuel supplier is bound with. There's always a due process, and believe it or not, probably 99% you probably are right. But the problem for you might be is how to tell them that you're right, putting it on paper, and then if you're not successful with the company, how can you take it externally to make sure someone who's fair, someone who's objective, can look at your case? I know we've talked about a great deal about how bad the companies are, and companies are not here to defend themselves. We're aware of that, but do mind you that we are using here as an example where someone felt hard done by it, by both the landlord who provided the service, as well as the company. Yeah, so I mean, to really, Angela, in your experience, if someone has to seek advice, what sort of things should trigger that advice, do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you're feeling, that, well, obviously, if they have changed, the amount that you should be paying, you have to examine it very, very closely to see whether it's fair, So what I would recommend doing is to take regular readings yourself, meter readings, and to see, how much energy you're actually using. I think for a lot of people, even that can be challenging, but I mean, it's something that you have to just get used to, basically. Maybe empowering yourself a little bit more and not leaving things to chance.
Absolutely. I mean, empowering can go a long way, and I think the moment you know, not just simply what to do and how to do it, that can develop your confidence a great deal. Now, Money Advice Service has got a very user-friendly website, which is designed for individuals to learn a lot about money, especially those who are confident at themselves, but what you need a bit more kind of guidance and support. And if you look at it, it gives you a number of kind of things that you can do, and especially when it comes to tips anyway. And according to Money Advice Service, what should you do with your extra money? You can get tips on ways to deal with money. But it says, of course, there are lots of comparison sites that you can look at in order for you to get a very good deal. And one of the things they mentioned is compare the market. You can check that, and there are other ways also looking at it in a sense of how you can try lots of companies out. It doesn't take very long. You can save potentially hundreds of pounds in order to gain access to kind of cheaper rates. So you can look at once you're online. They'll only ask you for your recent electricity bill, the amount of fuel you used. It also has YouTube videos that you can actually watch before you think about what steps that you want to take. But there is no justification for not checking and getting the best deal, because there are many companies who are desperate for your business, and if you look around, I mean, Angela, I mean, in your case, when you and I worked together, if you remember,
Yes.
do you remember how much you saved? Do you remember how much we saved? You saved? You probably don't remember, so I think if I remember correctly, I put like £150 you saved per year.
Yeah, at least.
So something like that,
yeah.
and for in many other cases it could be more. So obviously, if something like that, as it stands now, a pound has to go a long way to survive, especially. People are hard hit by all sorts of changes that are happening. Certain things are within your control, and other things that are not controlled. So in this case, every single penny matters. So yes, there is no justification for not comparing the market and looking for the best deal. Now, when it comes to complaints, naturally you will find the complaints. So Ofgem that regulates all the companies that provide fuels, he has a very kind of informed information really around companies, and if you want to complain, you can check its website to get more information around it. So that's kind of what it is really in the context of fuel suppliers. And after the break, what we are going to be receiving, or what we are going to be talking really, is more about PPI. So I just want to say obviously thank you to Angela in the meantime. Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome.
In the meantime, let's listen briefly about what PPI means to people.
Hold on one second. When PPI is personal payment, I forgot. Personal payment insurance, and we have PPI like in case you get injured at like your job or something. So say if like a bar falls on your head and you get injured and it's not your fault, then you can claim PPI from like an insurance company from your job. So you can claim money from your job if you get injured, basically.
PPI is they are conning the people, and because many people they don't know, they are thinking PPI is the same thing, but it is different.
Right, it's if you take out money or someone owes you money, that's what PPI means.
PPI is like something like, hold on, you need to let me, hold on one second. When PPI is personal payment, I forgot. Personal payment insurance, and we have PPI like in case you get injured at like your job or something. So say if like a bar falls on your head and you get injured and it's not your fault, then you can claim PPI from like an insurance company from your job, so you can claim money from your job if you get injured, basically.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'm off.
We'll come back
Yep,
just
thank you
after
very
the
much.
break.